want diet. What's happening to me?
My wife of 20 years was like, I can't handle it anymore. I don't really want to be with you. I don't want to be with me either. I'm a fucking terrible person.
I went through that as well.
Hi, everyone. Happy almost holidays. This episode features actor and musician Kevin Cogen. He's a young guy recently diagnosed with MS, and he's wondering what next. This conversation got deep into the weeds with how MS affects everything around you. If you are recently diagnosed, think you're going to get diagnosed, or if you've had MS for a long time, you may want to watch this video. It's got some really good information, and, well, maybe you could contribute in the comments below. Let's get started.
I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS. And today I have Kevin here. Kevin was recently diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and he reached out to me through my YouTube channel and wanted to chat a little bit. Now, the dynamic here is he's recently diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2018, but I've had it most of my life. And he was basically asking me, hey, can we have a conversation? Almost to set expectations of what he might be up against. And this is not medical advice. This is just patients talking to patients. And there's things I have learned along the way. And we thought we would record this because there's a lot of other people out there that are being diagnosed right now. And I think the more information to share, the better we do. So, Kevin, I want to say thank you very much for allowing to share your story with the world. And, it's always interesting to see how one person's journey starts and what happens. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Cliff. I really appreciate it. So my name is Kevin, Kevin Crunch online. I'm a actor slash musician, and I was recently diagnosed with multiple sclerosis early August, right after I had played a show in Santa Barbara on guitar. It was my first show in July 4th. And then 3 weeks after, I started to have my symptoms that would result to my very first hospital visit ever. I've always lived a very super healthy lifestyle, or so I thought. It was very surprising and shocking to me to go from feeling invincible, and I had just turned 30. So I was like, oh, this is great. I feel super healthy. I just turned 30, celebrated my birthday, played a show. What could happen? I woke up one day and I had this funny little tingling in my feet, and I had just kind of brushed it off. I was like, that's just a pinched nerve. This tingling is just, I must have slept wrong because I slept on the couch. So maybe I pinched my back. I don't know. The tingling persisted for a matter of hours after. It kept going, and it was starting to spread from my feet to over encompassing my entire foot, and then crawling up to my ankles and my shins. And I remember looking to my girlfriend going, hey, this is so weird. My feet are tingling, and normally after 5 minutes of walking around, they stop, and they're not waking up. They're still asleep. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, I must have pinched my back really good. I'm going to go to sleep and see what tomorrow brings. I wake up and, oh, wow, they're definitely past my ankles now. That tingling sensation is rising. It's still going up. And then the next day I woke up, it was up to my knees. And it had felt that this is super bizarre. It might be a little bit too much information, but I remember when I got up, I noticed the tingling was in my knees, and it felt like one of my butt cheeks was overlapping the other one. It's what it felt like, and it was such a weird experience. And I remember thinking, that's not right. So I'm feeling around my back, and I'm going, that's not an overlapping. That's numbness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like somebody took Novocaine, or actually they took lidocaine cream and put it all over my legs and all over my butt, and starting to go up to my back now. I have all this lidocaine cream on me, and somebody also decided to inject Novocaine in there too. So I have this rooted sensation. It's not like I'm completely numb. I can feel deep inside the fibrous tissues of my body, but I can't feel past the first 2 inches of depth. And this was such a weird, bizarre sensation. And it felt like somebody was not squeezing my legs, but it was a constant prickling, tingling sensation, and it was a deadening. I couldn't really tell if my feet were being touched. I remember my girlfriend, she was brushing her hand up and down my leg, saying like, "Hey, it's time to get going." And I looked at her, I was like, "Did you just rub my leg?" And she goes, "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" There's nothing wrong with it aside from the fact I can't feel it. And so I let her know that's what was going on. Immediately went over to my mom. I told her, "Hey, this is what's going on. I have a diminished sensation and a tingling in my lower half, and it's spreading." She normally, whenever I tell her I have some sort of health thing going on, she rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh, you're fine. So don't worry about it. It'll get itself done." This is the first time in my life I've ever seen her eyeballs bulge out of her head when I told her something, and her going, "That's not okay. That's not good. We need to do something about this now." She immediately calls one of her neurologist friends and explains the situation. She's saying this could be GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, because it's typical. The numbness is going from your feet up to your waistband now. And I'm on the phone with the neurologist and I'm telling him exactly the symptoms. He says, "You got to go to the hospital right now. You are having a neurological attack. And we have to make sure that we nip it in the bud right now and see what's going on." But this is very asymptomatic of a neurological attack. It's not a pinched nerve. It needs to be investigated immediately. Me, I'm going, "What do you mean it's not a pinched nerve?"
Right, right.
Neurological attack. I feel fine. I'm still with it completely mentally, cognitively. I can make decisions for myself. I'm good. The next day comes and it has crept up to my belly button. And at that point, I'm going, I need to go to the hospital. It is starting to get near my diaphragm. If my diaphragm goes numb, we're going to have a serious issue here because I understand the respiratory issues that can arise from a numbed diaphragm. Go in there and they look at me saying, "What are your symptoms?" I let them know the numbness of my waistband. And one of my biggest fears, and this is an encouragement for anybody listening, is MS has taught me you can overcome your biggest fears because when faced in the eyes of turmoil, you'd be surprised what you'll do to beat it. And my biggest fears were lumbar punctures. They immediately said that they need to bend me over this chair and they need to stick this horse needle into my back. I need to take a deep breath and relax, don't move. And this was
Yep,
all
right.
happening so fast. They had put an IV in my arm, and the person administering the IV was really brutal and rough.
Mm.
And I was already shaking. I was having full body spasms from the pain. And I've always kind of had those full body spasms where it feels like your body's tightening up and you can't stop shaking. And it feels like you're not cold, but you're acting like you're cold. And I don't know why. And I'm just not about getting a giant needle in my back, but I
Mhm.
understand that this has to be done. Otherwise, I'm leaving opportunities for other things to occur and me not knowing what's going on. They withdraw my cervical spinal fluid and withdrew it very quickly. I was quite surprised to discover that the LP actually did not hurt nearly as bad as I was expecting it to. I guess I got very lucky with the person doing it.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so I was very fortunate. There was one odd sensation when they got into the sac, they call it. It's the sac that has all the fluids. When they got in there, I did feel this popping sensation that still haunts me to this day. I've never felt something like that before. It wasn't a painful experience. I think it must have been because of the numbness I was experiencing. Might
Sure.
have helped with the pain. But I remember feeling like something's not right inside me anymore. This is changed. Something has just changed. Finally, they do the withdrawal. It's all done. I'm going, thank God that's over. A couple days go by. They're waiting for the test results. They do a couple MRIs, and then the next thing I know, this neurologist comes in and says, "So, how much do you know about multiple sclerosis?" And that's when it felt like my life was derailed. It just felt like this train that I had, this well-oiled train I had going, was just blown off its track and flipped on its side and it starts skidding, and everybody inside the train is now in danger. And I was very frightened at what was to occur, because growing up, I had my father's medical books, which are very dated now. And I remember reading about multiple sclerosis because growing up, for me, there's been nothing more important than retaining one's intellectual integrity. And so when I found out that this was multiple sclerosis with the lesions in my brain, it was the most devastating blow, because that was my whole shtick, is, protecting one's mental cognitivity, like being able to make decisions for themselves and being a critical thinker, especially being an artist. When your job is creative thinking and critical thinking, you have to be a problem solver in a studio, on a set, or anything in that environment. You can't be a problem. You have to be reliable, and you have to be a solution. That was very shocking to me, that my mind was going to be under attack. It started to build up this understanding and knowledge of what I can possibly do for other people in our situation. And I noticed immediately after I got out of the hospital that I still felt like crap. I still had the numbness in my body. I was there for 13 days and I still had this waistband of numbness. And they gave me IVIG, which is immunoglobulin, through an intravenous injection. And they did it for 5 times. And they were explaining to me the IVIG is to stop the numbness from spreading. All this is to slow the progression of everything. And I'm going, well, how do we just get the numbness gone? And they told me, well, you can do steroids, or you can just do the IVIG. And my family has a poor history of steroids. So I opted out of the steroids. I'm not telling anybody to opt out of steroids. We chose for me not to. And I noticed that the numbness persisted for about 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. So we're talking about 4 weeks of numbness, plus 4 weeks. And I remember thinking to myself, well, something has to change. I'm still numb. I need to do something. And that's when I dove into my diet more. I dove into certain supplements that I really should be looking into, and a lot of herbal remedies that I can get my hands on to kind of fight back as best as I can in time. So that way I can hopefully get my hands on a medication that will help fight this thing. I wasn't the biggest fan of the disease modifying therapies when I had first initially heard them. Only because my understanding of B cell depleters and other immunosuppressants, what they can do long term, long run. I was very scared and very nervous about the whole idea. So I didn't have the best opinion of them starting. But shortly after, I realized, okay, I need to be very open minded, because everything's at stake. Everything is at stake. My brain is everything, not only to me, but to the people that I hold myself accountable for, such as my girlfriend who lives with me, my family who I help take care of. I have to be there for them and for myself and for other people in my situation. So that's when I started doing more research about what I can do to build my body up to prepare for the DMTs. A week or two after I've done my hardcore research, I had gotten on the phone to make my appointment that they requested I make with a neurologist. They told me, we'll see you in a year. And I'm going, but I have MS.
Right. Yes.
I have MS. When in a year I'll have more disability. What do you mean in a year you'll see me? I have really good health insurance. My money's no good here? I guess not. I was just very PO'd at that situation, especially because I'm, a son of a doctor. I'm thinking, this is how you guys treat your own. Like, this is hurting me left and right. Like, this is how you treat anybody who has like neurodegenerative issue. Like, that's not good. Fortunately, that doctor, we ended up not going to them, and I made an appointment with and more doctors at Cedars-Sinai in LA, Los Angeles. And that's when I got a more firm understanding of where my lesions were placed. They are, fortunately, were not riddled with lesions, but there were lesions showing in my spinal cord, in my brain, the typical locations. And one of them was in a location that will affect one's temperament and mood. And that was a big eye opener because then I started thinking, well, how long have I had MS? Because I used to have this thing where my girlfriend would come up to me and she would give me a kiss in the cheek, and I would uncontrollably cringe and kind of push her away, even though I wanted her close. I wanted her to give me that kiss on the cheek. I would have this, I have to push you away. And I'm like laughing almost uncontrollably, like Joker, like, ha. And I had no idea why I was doing that. So I started thinking, how long have I been dealing with this? Because maybe that was why I've been having that weird sensation. And I backtrack to about 6 years before that initial attack and realized, oh my God, I had another attack back then because I remember playing Super Mario 64 professionally. I used to be a speedrunner and I would play on Twitch and YouTube and try to beat the clock. And I remember playing for 19 hours straight, going to bed, waking up, and the whole left side of my body gone, would not move, would not function. I thought it was a pinched nerve, like I did fast forward 6, 7 years in the future.
Sure.
And so we didn't think anything of it, never got searched. And then I'm just looking at all the other lesions. They're all in like the not great spots where they're telling you, yeah, if you don't do something about this, you're going to be immobilized. You're going to experience these problems. I'm, again, getting devastated, but understanding the situation and being very open to what I can do to build my body up to help fight against those prognoses and outcomes. Fast forward to today, where I am now getting ready for my next meeting with my neurologist. I still am not taking a DMT yet because I've yet to decide on one. I'm very open to it. I don't know how my disease is going. I don't have an MRI back at home. But what I do know is being backed into a corner and being told that this is what's happening. This is the possible horrible outcome that can happen if you don't do something about your life right now. You'll be surprised the type of changes you'll make. I used to be a big mac and cheese advocate. I loved my pizza. I loved eating. I used to cook A5 Wagyu steaks all the time. And I would make me very happy to be able to cook that and then share it with my girlfriend, who she normally doesn't eat meat, but she would eat meats that I prepared, which I felt very honored for. And it made me happy to be able to feed those I care about. And because I never really cooked until a couple of years back. And then coming to find that my diet was a highly inflammatory diet. And that's when I had to just change everything. I've gone completely plant-based whole food diet, no more dairy, no more meat. And my inflammation is at all-time low. I used to have these cramps in my hands from playing guitar. Now I can play for 8 hours straight, no problem. My mental acuity has done nothing but increase in proficiency. The ability for me to find certain words that I want to cherry pick to get my sentence across has never been easier. I'm actually able to make coherent and consistent thought now, as in the past I wasn't able to. I would be thinking a million miles a minute, but when I go to get those words out, word salad, I would trip over my words, and then the struggle of trying to get those words out would make me forget the entire sentence I was trying to say in the first place. There were all these things, and I noticed right before I switched, I was having a conversation, and right before I switched my eating habits and my lifestyle and exercise and all that, I was trying to have a conversation with my brother, and he was asking me just a basic question. He said, "So, what is your plan? What are you going to do?" And I just said, I was trying to say, I'm going to flip my eating habits over completely. I'm going to go full super healthy or all organic vegan. This is what I wanted to say. I wanted to say this. It came out like Bill from Stephen King's It. I was stuttering all over the
Yes.
place.
Yes.
I remember I was going, dot, 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 dot. I want my diet. And I just had to stop. And I looked at my mom, who was holding the phone. I looked at her and I go, what's happening to me? what is happening? And so when I realized that I couldn't speak anymore, which is very important for me being an actor, you have to be able to deliver your lines with clarity. That day, I swapped my diet. I gave it everything I had. I'd started researching different homeopathic remedies, different tinctures I should start implementing. I came across lion's mane mushroom tinctures, cordyceps mushroom tinctures, mushroom tinctures, and turkey tail mushroom tinctures. Implemented that in my life. I started eating nothing but like greens and berries and nuts and making sure that my saturated fat intake was no higher than 10 grams a day. Everything that I can do in my power. And I immediately started to notice that my symptoms were alleviating, but there's still this overwhelming sensation that like this beast is still lurking in there. Well, we went on this really long drive, a 430-mile drive. Well, I remember getting out of the car to bring our luggage into the house, and I go to bend down, and there it is again, that ghostly passenger just saying, "Hey, by the way, I'm still here." And just remember thinking to myself, like, I thought what I was doing was working. And immediately from there, I realized this MS is such an unpredictable beast. It's just such a unforgiving, unpredictable beast that it will show no sympathy for you in any time. You can't show it sympathy either. And I'm now learning to be completely regimented and strict. And my mission is, if I can, defeat the disease. And I'm keeping that a belief because I believe that beliefs are very powerful. So I believe that I could change my diet. I believe that I could start to help heal my body. And a lot of my symptoms have improved vastly. I used to go to the bathroom. This might be a little TMI.
No, there's no such thing with this disease. You've seen my channel. I tell all, man, it's
Yeah.
because it affects every part of your body, you know.
Oh my God, every part. And so yeah, I used to go to the bathroom every other, other day. We're talking one bowel movement for 4 days.
Right.
And that was already a thing before the MS, or at least what I noticed was happening within those past 8 years. Because before my first attack, I remember, yeah, I rarely go to the bathroom. I'm like a camel. Feed me up and
Yeah.
I can just go, go, go. And
Amazing.
and then all of a sudden, when this last attack, it was really bad. I could not have a bowel movement to save my life, but I was peeing a lot. I was having to, go to the bathroom. I really couldn't even hold it really. I ran out and I did my learning on how to get the digestive tract going. And that's where the whole food, plant-based diet really came in left swing for me. Won't work for everybody. Everybody's different. Everybody's an individual, but it started to regulate my bowel movements. And now I'm happy to say that 30 minutes before we got into call, I had a bowel movement. Every single day, I'm having a bowel movement.
That's
So
something to celebrate with this disease. You know, from someone who's had it for a long time, and I don't know if we all have had it for a long time, it just gets worse at one point enough. You explain exactly what happened to me? Same thing with the legs, right? I was out surfing. I was living in San Diego. I started feeling like I was stepping on guitar strings, like my feet would vibrate and it would cruise up and the whole thing. I mean, full disclosure here, I didn't really panic about that because I thought I just had like a surfing injury, like a squished vertebrae or something. When I started to panic is when my wife and I were going to party on the in the bedroom a little bit, and I couldn't feel anything below like my midline, and I mean nothing. And I'm like, "Holy crap! What in the hell is going on here?" And that was when, of course, nothing's more medically necessary than when a guy thinks he's gone sterile or has mega ED, right? Like, especially when you're in your mid 30s, and it's just because the signals aren't getting there. And it would happen when it got hot, and it rarely got hot in San Diego. But when I moved to Texas, when I finally got my diagnosis, when it was hot all the time, man, I felt like I was 90 years old. Like I couldn't move. One thing we didn't talk about with you was, this is interesting because I'm almost 50 and you're in your 30s. How is the fatigue for you right now?
So right now, I think I'm very fortunate. My fatigue, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible after getting out of the hospital. I called it the hospital drag, right? Because I'm a firm believer that you're affected by energies around you. Other people's energies can affect you, and you can affect their energies, and so your whole
Sure.
little community can really decide on your outcome of energy. But I noticed that I was just so tired. I couldn't even stay awake past 10 p.m. And I had used to been a night owl indefinitely. And my energy was just to the we were 6 feet under. That's how much energy we had. I was like Alec Baldwin in Beetlejuice. I wasn't there. I was a ghost. I noticed when I got my diet more under control, I didn't start to have more energy, but what I did start to have was more ability to move around, which then led me to work out more, and that started helping with the energy levels. But if anybody's listening to this, what really kind of got my energy together, and I mentioned these mushroom tinctures earlier, was when I started implementing these mushroom tinctures, and I swear they worked miracles for me. And I also I couldn't believe the situation I was put in but I remember asking that first initial neurologist, what diet changes should I make sure that, I can fight this the best I can? Is there anything else that I can do aside from Western medicine to kind of combat this? No, diet's not going to do anything to really help much. And you should just come back to me and get your medications when you can. And I was so heartbroken. I was like, wait, you're telling me that nutrition does not affect anything in the brain? Nutrition affects everything because it's the building blocks of your body. That's what started my obsession. Was I wanted to really figure out what are all the naturopathic ways I could build my body up. That way, when the Western medicine has to come in, it's in the perfect environment to do its thing. And my body will finally be in a position where it can fight any of these flare ups and attacks because it will have the support system necessary. Um, and I'm really curious to see how efficacious my decisions will have been when I go to get my next MRI. And I'm hoping we can stay in contact too, so I can keep you updated on, if there's any lesions or not.
For being as early in the diagnosis as you are, you're way ahead of where I ever was. I mean, I was definitely showing symptoms at around your age, but I was just being an idiot, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to go see a doctor, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I was so arrogant, so stupid. But I don't know if that would have changed the outcome that I didn't get my actual diagnosis until many years later. Um, but I think you touch on a couple of really interesting things because for being as early in your journey as you are, in that you're starting to understand early that like no matter what you do, you're going to have your days. And I really beat myself up over that in the beginning. Like I'm like, dude, I'm doing everything by the book. I know what I'm talking about. I'm getting lots of exercise. And then there's days that just doesn't matter. It's like MS is showing up at the front door. It's going to hang out. It's going to be the deadbeat uncle on the couch that's just like toxic as hell. And you got to deal with it because it's family. And I still struggle with that. So many years later, is like, like yesterday, I had a horrible day. It was just, but my kid had a play that I had to go to. And he kept asking me, are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to be there. But it took everything in my power just to put one foot in front of the other to get there and then just to sit there, which I don't know about other MSers, but sitting stagnant for like more than an hour is like death. You talked about riding in the car. And I did an episode about how I sold my last car and bought a very specific car because at this point, it's all about comfort. I don't care about gas mileage because I don't drive enough for it to matter. But if I am super fatigued from a horrible car ride, by the time I get to wherever I go, I might as well not go. So I had to buy the most comfortable vehicle I could find and afford to make sure I had the energy to do the things that actually mattered with my family. Like you said, focus on the things that really matter. Yeah. So you're way ahead of the game. Like we get in this mindset of like, let's do battle. Let's do battle. We're not going to battle this thing. We're living with it. And it's a relationship and a very messed up one at that. And it took me a long time to really come to terms with that. Like when I first got diagnosed, it's like I'm going to be the breakthrough story. I'm going to kick ass on this thing, and no one's going to see what's coming. And here I am 6 years later, where it's like, okay, I've readjusted my entire life, accepting the condition, figuring out that, accepting the condition, modifying the lifestyle to work with it. And I think a lot of people get frustrated, at least I did for the first year or two. I usually, when I meet new people that have just been diagnosed and they say, well, what do I do? And I say, give yourself 2 years and give yourself some grace because this is a complete change. And when my doctor called me, he says, when you get home, because I wasn't even home at that point. He says, I want you to sit down at the table with your wife and I want to go over this with you because everything changes from this moment forward. And I thought, well, what the hell? And he didn't tell me what was going on, but I pretty much knew. There's a whole story about that. I think that's in my YouTube channel. It took 10 years to get a diagnosis, primarily because I was in California and the healthcare at the time was suboptimal. I don't know if that's still the case. That was my experience. My wife's experience with cancer was completely different than the healthcare we received in Austin. And now here in North Carolina, it's just vastly different. Everything changed. And everything is still changing. 6 years later, it's because the disease is changing and life is changing. There's those days, and I don't know if you're at this point yet, but there are people my age that are, where not only do you have MS, which may not be progressing, but you're getting older. When I was 30, I used to go out and surf shortboard all the time. There's no way I could do that now. Longboard at the best on the smallest day at Trestles or something, right? Like it just would not happen to be the way I used to be. And you could blame the MS for that, but really it's a combination of not just MS, but natural aging.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the big things I've learned along the way is just like, you got to set your boundaries with the toxic people around you, because in my case, stress really aggravates this thing.
Same.
Okay. And that seems to be a common theme. Like, I think the people I talk to that are like really highly progressed have just kind of hung on to either a stressful career or a stressful relationship, which I guess is kind of one and the same in a sense. And it seems to just move that needle with MS much quicker than readjusting everything. Like I used to be in aerospace, super stressful, super fun, very long hours, like everything you could do to your body to make sure MS was going to progress. Aerospace had horrible diet, lack of exercise, super long demanding hours, not a lot of sleep. And then, right, it's like all that crap. And I know that's where most of my progression happened. And that was by my choice, but I didn't know I had MS. I just thought, well, this is what everybody's dealing with around me. And then I realized the fatigue definitely way out of line with the people around me, because they were fine working 16 hours and I was not safe to drive home after working 8 hours. One of those situations. So it is a complete lifestyle change. But like I said, I'm very impressed with you because I think you're figuring that out. I can't even talk today, like we were saying earlier about, I'm thinking about it, but I can't get it out of my mouth. You're figuring it out early on, and that is a huge advantage. I mean, you're just now getting to the point where you might start a DMT, but I think you've discovered that diet has a huge part of it. I can't believe that doctor. Yeah, I can believe that doctor didn't say anything about diet, but my really good MS neurologist, two of which I've had that have been very impressive, is like, they tell me heart health is brain health, right? Like you eat for your heart and it'll benefit your brain. And that's especially true with MS. And I can't even express how much of a difference that makes, getting away from the processed foods, the processed sugars. I just did an episode with Dr. Boster from the Boster Clinic. We were both reading a book called Ultra Processed People, and it is fascinating and terrifying. And it's so applicable to MS and how you can feel if you eat like shit and how you can feel if you put some time into it. My concern with the eating is not only does it take a lot of time to figure out what works for you, it's one foot in front of the other every day. That's what it feels like to me. It's expensive. I've got a family, and to eat right is not cheap. I don't eat red meat very often because it doesn't make me feel good. stick to like fatty fish like salmon and fresh greens and stuff like that because I could poop the next day if I eat that stuff. If I eat processed food, my MS flares up and nothing's moving. And you know how that
Yeah.
is. It's terrible. So um it's a journey and it's exploration. And I'm just impressed, Kevin. You're way ahead of the game.
Well, I have people like you to thank. I feel like without you being as adamant about your documentation of your experience, there's really not a whole lot of information out there from patients to patients, especially educated patients. I'm not trying to diss anybody. I have love in my heart for everybody, but you being an engineer are definitely in the what I would consider the upper echelon of intelligent criteria for a patient. You understand the term of cause and effect. And so seeing you document and explain your experience has helped me in my decision making and kind of given me a community that I can kind of latch onto and really soak in everybody else's experience so that way I can have my own educated guess as to what to expect. And I can't thank you enough for all the work you put into your videos to be able to help people see what it is that not only you're going through, but potentially what I might experience in the next year or two, three, potentially six. You never know. But I can't thank you enough for what you've done. And I would be very what's the word? I would be a fool if I said this was all on me. But it's really it's a culmination of the community and them trying to fight back for their life and fight back for their quality of life because it's not a fight with MS. It's a loving fight for oneself, right? That's what
Yes,
MS.
absolutely.
It's it's you can't be mad at your situation because that's just going to stress you out. But you can be understanding of your situation, and you've just taken that concept and ran with it, and you've departed that experience onto me. Now that's the way I look at things: is I am living with this now, and so I just have to be understanding of my limitations. That way I can expand those limitations. That way I can push the envelope when I can. That way, hopefully, I can enjoy my quality of life a little bit more. And the diet is such a foundational building block. It's so important. And again, I'm going to express it to everybody. You eat healthy, you feel healthy. Plain as that. Simple as that.
Most of the
And
time. Yeah. And yeah, I appreciate the kudos on what I'm trying to do here. And I'm excited to meet with everybody about it. Um, and I had a really good point and I just forgot. Oh, I got it. It's one of those days where things are just not connecting. Um, and this is really an important point. And you may cross this bridge, you may never get to this bridge now that you know about it. But that first 2 years, when you realize that, for as bad as it sounds, you're not like other people, and you are going to have to maneuver around a very big wall. This is how I perceive it. It's a very big wall to move around. And there will always be this obstacle in the way of everything I try to achieve because of my MS. For that first 2 years after my diagnosis, my wife at 20 years was like, I can't handle it anymore. You're a terrible person. Kevin, I was angry. I was pissed. Like, I felt wronged in so many ways. And I, I told my therapist, I had a cognitive therapist, which my neurologist prescribed to me, thank God. And a huge part of me getting over this wall, in a sense. I said, man, I'm a bitter person. I want a do-over. Like, I feel like I've been robbed. Like I was a healthy person doing what I wanted to do and doing it when I wanted to do it. And then this thing comes along and just starts robbing opportunities from me. And my wife came to me one day and she says, I can't handle this anymore. She's like, I don't really want to be with you. And I think she was expecting me to say, well, it's EMS, but I didn't say that. I said, I don't want to be with me either. I don't blame you. Like, I'm a fucking terrible person. And that day was interesting. It was like, wow, I've really crossed this point. Like, this is someone I never thought in a million years I could face a divorce with, because we got along so well. We're both very quirky, creative people, and we understand each other and have for a very long time. And here I have this wall again, now in the last part of the most secure part of my life, breaking down and standing, well, I should say, was standing there between her and I. And I thought, well, damn it, fighting this thing's not working. I've got to live with both these things, my disease and my family. And it took some like incredible willpower. I don't know if that's even the right word, to like step back from that situation and think, holy shit, I am a terrible person when I think about it. But it's not really me, it's my disease. I've got to turn this around. So, as much as it sucks and as much as the cards were stacked against me, I mean, I was out of a job. I was unable to go to a job. Everything was on her. We had just had a kid. And it was a very stressful, it was during the pandemic. It was very stressful for everybody. I had to think about how I was going to reposition my life to not drive everybody crazy around me. And one thing you said earlier on in this conversation is, you said, you're thinking about which DMT you're going to use, and you're not very excited about what they could mean long term. I totally get that. I was there. I hesitated for a while. And then I realized, like, after that conversation with my wife, it's like, unlike you, I wasn't as smart as you at that point. I realized I'm not doing the DMT for me. Like, I'm dealing with this thing every day, whether I like it or not. It's how much are they going to have to deal with it when it gets really bad? Like, if I didn't do my best to make sure I'm not completely disabled and they're rolling me around in a wheelchair and wiping my butt for me, like, then yeah, I am a horrible person, right? Like, I don't want to do that to them. And um, so it was an interesting time. And that was kind of the turning point in the disease. It's like, am I going to sit there and like fade away into the darkness and woe in my own misery? Or am I going to do something about this? And I can't cure it, but I sure as hell can tell people about it, which is almost like the Paul Revere, like, it's coming for you. And here's how you might be able to outsmart it. And that's what the information is on the channel. Like, if we all get together as a community, it's different for everybody, but we're all going to be experiencing fatigue. It's all going to impact our lives. It's going to impact the people that are around us, people that care about us, the people that work with us. And there are ways in which, like, we're not totally crazy. If we share the information, we might actually make it a little bit easier to live with this disease. And so, like I said, you're way ahead of the game, man. And you're already thinking about that stuff. And I think that's awesome, because living with the disease is way more difficult than taking an injection every month. It's like you're waking up and dealing with it for 24 hours. And the injection is a 5-second part of my month. Okay, what are the long-term consequences? It doesn't matter. Like, what am I doing today that are going to limit my disease impacts on the people around me that I actually care about? Because internally, I'm getting better dealing with the disease, even though it really, really, really sucks. And it makes everything really hard. But, like, I don't want to scare away the people around me. So I need to show them that I'm doing the best I can to make sure that, like, we don't have to deal with it in an intensity that we don't have to if we could do something about it today. So there you go.
Those are very valuable words. I hope everybody hears those words and runs with it. And the whole I'm a terrible, horrible person that you were experiencing, I went through that as well. I was lashing out at everybody because my whole life I wasn't allowed to be emotional. That's why I went to acting. It's because it was an outlet where I could be emotional. If I raised my voice out of excitement, my mother would think that it wasn't excitement, that it was anger, and she would say, "Calm down! Oh my God, calm down." So I wasn't allowed to express true emotion, really, very often. And so when I was hit with my MS, I lost it. I was so angry at my situation. I was angry at the world. And then when I was venting my frustrations, I'll never forget my mom um, telling me, you need to calm down, Kevin. Not in the calming way, like you need to calm down, but you need to calm down. You're making this bad for me. I'm making it bad for you.
Yes.
Yeah, kiddo, you actually are. Just take a step back. Take a step.
Right.
And so when I realized when I said that, and I remember hearing my voice in that tone, I was like, I'm making it bad for you. Yeah, actually, I am. I'm so sorry. I need to figure out a way to really vent this and find my zen because it's not going to do good being frustrated at this situation. But I remember that overwhelming sensation and need for just expulsion, like the expulsion of just, oh, I got to get it out. I got to scream at the top of my lungs. I need to just let the universe know how BS this all is.
Yes.
Because I'm young, I'm 30, and you're telling me that my brain is deteriorating 10 times faster than your average individual when I, the one who has done nothing but preach intellectual integrity and never touching any drugs in my life to ever have any cellular degeneration ever. I've only wanted cellular regeneration growing up. And so I've tried to fixate my life around being super healthy. And this is happening to me.
Yeah.
What
It's
the
messed up.
yeah, it was crazy. But the big lesson that I pulled away from it was, yeah, it's happening to you. Nothing you can do about it aside from make the best of the situation and look for that silver lining. I think Stuart Little in the movie that I remember Hugh Laurie talking about a silver lining. And
Yep.
that message like came so true. It was like you're a small little mouse in this very dangerous world, and you're getting crushed on by this disease because you're letting it. If you make
Yep.
friends with your enemies, then guess what? You know the inside knowledge. You know how to take care of this thing, and you're not at war anymore. So I had to make friends with my MS. I had to make friends with myself. Ultimately, I had to learn to love myself again. And I think the biggest turning point for me before the MS, I remember my girlfriend and I, she's the whole reason why my diet is so amazing. She was raised a raw foodist growing up. So she was teaching me all about, what type of foods to ingest and stuff. And I remember I was a terrible person to my girlfriend when we were first getting together. I was in a very toxic relationship with another girl, and she I had my first flare up with her, the ex girlfriend, because it was just the most toxic, violent, emotionally draining, mentally debilitating relationship you could ever imagine. And I guarantee that stress contributed to my giant first flare up that went completely unnoticed medicinally.
Sure.
And when I was getting with my now girlfriend, potentially life partner, um, I remember I was so shut off and I was so fearful because I was coming out of that relationship. I was having white lies here, white lies there, and I had to try to remember these little white lies to kind of keep the peace, keep her happy, keep me happy, make my life easy. But I wasn't making my life easy. It was making it hard. And I remember when we broke up, my girlfriend I'm with now, we broke up because I was being a horrible person and my whole world was crashing down around me. Fortunately, I worked on myself and I came to the conclusion that transparency is going to be what saves me. And so
Absolutely.
ever since I adopted transparency through and through, no more even little itty bitty white lies, dumping all that giant megaton of stress just vanished like Houdini, just made it go away. And I've been nothing but happy since our relationship, beyond flourishing. I'm actually up at her parents' house right now. We're
Oh,
visiting for the
cool.
holidays. And so, but that was the long 430-mile drive I was talking about. We drove all the
Okay.
way up here. And life with her has just been phenomenal. And now I have her in my wheel court, um, helping me fight this thing because I'm being completely transparent with her, letting her know this is happening to me. This is how I feel. Um, I'm letting you know right now, I'm having a really bad day. So I apologize if I seem snarky, if I seem short. My fuse is just not there today. So please bear with me. Ever since I adopted that transparency, it's just been bliss.
I love that. And you know what's interesting with this disease, and again, you may not be there yet, but you could have already been at this point, is once the people around you understand you have this disease and you're not willing to basically tell the white lies because we can't keep track of the lies, or we don't have the cognitive capability of doing that, especially at 48 years old. I've got a lot going against me in terms of memory and MS and all that stuff. So I don't even bother. I'm very transparent with people. You have an opportunity to make yourself the best you can possibly be, and it'll make things easier down the road. And that goes with the which DMT do I take? Which people do I surround myself with? Like you mentioned earlier on, uh, what dietary choices do you make? And I'm only saying that not because I know everything, but because I've experienced it, and um, it all impacts how MS treats you at the end of the day. And so I'm not sure if any of that made sense. Like for some reason, it really resonated with me. It's like you're already naked; you have nothing to lose other than basically trying to improve your situation.
And that was a conversation I had with my girlfriend because, like I said, when I understand the science of the B cell depleter, and I know the long-term effects of what happens when you remove the B cell from your immune system, is it does leave you prone to upper respiratory infection like you would not believe.
Oh,
And
I
I
believe
remember,
it. I was in the emergency room on Saturday.
and I think
I believe it.
I really wanted to reach out to you about that because I just had that conversation with her. And I was saying, I really don't want to take these DMTs because of the upper respiratory risks that come. And, I asked my neurologist, what's the long-term effect of depleting the B cell? And they couldn't answer it. And
Right.
I had to tell them that it's upper respiratory infections that get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I live in Southern California. There's a lot of upper respiratory infections spreading out where I live,
Hmm.
and I'm already very nervous. Like I'm already a little bit of a hypochondriac as is, so I don't want to get that. And I remember telling her, this is my option is I can not do the DMTs and see what happens with the likelihood that God forbid something like have another attack and there's new lesions, or I can give this thing all I've got. I can throw every single nuke that I have in my arsenal at it. And so I've been very open minded about the DMTs, and everybody wants me to be very not hesitant, but mindful of the decision of swapping to a DMT and not. And like you should, because it is you're weighing out different risks. Um, but for me, there is no risk really because I'm already at risk.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's
I already have
exactly right.
so much to lose.
Your
I
risk is as high as it's going to be right now without interacting.
there are three giant nightmares. So I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit to our conversation about my experience in the hospital. I have three major nightmares in the medical field. First nightmare is the LP. Now I
Hmm.
had my LP, my lumbar puncture. Second nightmare is anything touching my eyeball, period. Anything touching my eyeball. Well, I didn't know that they were going to test the pressure of my eyeball. And so they took this metal pin and they put it on my actual eyeball. And so that was another top three nightmare I never want to experience. The third nightmare I never want to experience, which I haven't yet, and I'm sure if it showed its very ugly head, I would have to overcome it, and I would. but I'm going to do everything in my power to never have to overcome this giant nightmare. And this giant nightmare is losing my mobility to the degree where I need to self-catheterize.
Oh God, yeah.
And so when I found out my lesions, going back to where I saw the scans, one of the lesions is in an area where that can happen. Most definitely can happen. And so that was the big pivoting point of I need to build my body up to make sure that that does not. Um, whether I prevent it or I don't, we will never know until time tells. But what I can do is I can be aware of the situation and build my body up to fight that, because that is a big, giant fear. And being transparent with myself and those around me is like having a great team to help support me in the goal of not being in a wheelchair, losing my ability to be ambulatory. I always want to be ambulatory until I'm 120. I want to be walking around and doing my hikes and stuff. So I've just been working out nonstop, eating as healthy as I can, in the hopes that my legs will last me a lifetime, and I will never have to self-catheterize. That is the biggest fear I have, and an ultimate message about that fear is don't let it stop you. Let it motivate you. We used to
Yeah, I
say
love
this.
that.
We used to say this thing going on stage, because I used to do all sorts of acting. Right, I did theater. Theater is one of the most stressful things ever, because you're behind that curtain, your heart rate's going a million miles per hour, and when you're nervous, you seize, you tense up, you lock up, and everything goes blank. If you use those nerves, you use those negative feelings, then you're finding the power in them to now use against themselves. So that way you do your best job. I would say if you do have a fear, don't let it be a debilitating aspect of your life. Let it be a motivating aspect, and use it as a positive light, that this is why I'm doing all the work. This is why I'm looking into the DMTs. This is why I eat super healthy. This is why I exercise every day. This is why I'm learning guitar at the age of 30, trying to build neuroplasticity up, because
Sure.
using my hands is very important to me. This is why I'm on my journey. So that would be my ultimate message for anybody scared about future outcomes. Don't let it debilitate you. Let it motivate you. Make friends with your enemies.
Yeah. Yeah. Find your why. Like I said, my why was my family, and slowly seeing that slip away because of this disease was unacceptable. I couldn't do it for myself, but I sure as hell could do it for my family. I had a huge phobia of needles. Like I seriously have run out of like labs when they tried to take my blood. Like, no, you're not touching me with that. It's always been that way.
With
And
me,
now, like, yeah, and yeah, and so I had to start giving myself my Kesimpta, right? And I have a couple videos about that. And it took me forever to do the first one, and the second one took a little less time, and then the next one took a little less time. And I kept having to remind myself, I'm not doing this for me right now. I'm doing this for everybody else. And that was the only way I could get through it. And then Saturday, when I was admitted to the ER because of the MS hug, which was brought on by respiratory infection. I mean, they put um, um, a trauma needle in my arm, which is a big one, to get as much fluid in as they could.
big.
Yeah, the one that looks like a coffee straw. And the guy says to me before he does it, he said, "I am so sorry. This is not going to be comfortable, but we got to get you hydrated quickly." And I said, "No, don't worry about it, man. I stick myself all the time. I'm good." And I cannot believe I made it to that point where I was totally cool with it. I mean, they stuck me with all kinds of things. I was cool as a cucumber. Like I knew what I was expecting. And MS had built that up in me. Like I knew how to access my whys. Like, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not in the ER for me. I want to make sure I'm not a dead weight for everybody else. And what they have to do now is going to keep me from getting there and from being that dead weight. And I'm totally okay with that. And so finding the why has been empowering but difficult. Anyway, we are out of time, buddy, and we'll have to circle back around because I think there's a lot of stuff we could cover here. It'll be really interesting to see how your journey develops, especially as you start the DMT, because that can go any number of ways. And I see a lot of people complain because they say, "Oh, I started Ocrevus, this happened, blah blah blah. I just don't know where to go from here." There are lots of options. I've had to switch quite a few times, and only time will give you the tools you need to figure out what's going to work for you. And I think you're going to handle it really well. Um, I think you're going to find it quite empowering too, because it does change you physically. Like I find things make certain DMTs make me a little more fatigued, and I have more issues with other symptoms, but then other symptoms go away, but then they come way back at a predictable time. And I'll leave on this note just because it's something I want to talk about in a future episode. When I take my Kesimpta, the 3 days after my Kesimpta, I am an angry person because I am so uncomfortable in my own skin. But only sometimes, not every time I take the Kesimpta, it's like that. It was only sometimes, it's like MS all over again. But we have learned, my family has learned, like, oh, daddy or husband is taking his Kesimpta. We're just going to let him be in his room working on his videos for 3 days. We're not going to bug him. And I'm going to try my best to be a parent. But at the same time, we all know that like that 3 days is coming and it could go bad. And you don't want to be around me when I have those 3 days. It's 3 days a month. It's not much to ask, but it's one of those coping strategies. And so that's unique about Kesimpta for me. And Ocrevus is a whole nother story. But um, I don't know. There's a lot we could talk about with that. Kevin, I really appreciate it. We really chatted it up here. There's just so much to talk about with this disease, and especially from a perspective of someone who's recently diagnosed and much younger than myself, and myself who's been diagnosed for quite some time and has a different life situation. I have a family, and you're just getting to that point where you might be starting that kind of thing. I don't know. We can have a conversation about that as well, but I think it's a good juxtaposition of decisions you'll have to make and decisions I'm making every day to see where we end up. I mean, this is such a weird disease. It's so difficult.
It's so unpredictable too. You
It's
really
very
have no idea.
unpredictable.
Like you know what to expect, but you also don't know what to expect at the same time. It's
Right.
every day is a new bundle of magic tricks. So I can't thank you enough, Cliff, for taking the time to speak with me, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do with your channel. It helps people like me, and I'm sure it's super cathartic for you. I know what it's like to want to lose yourself in your work to help you cope and manage and really think about what's going on. And so I'm really excited to see what happens with the both of us in the future. And I can't wait for us to talk again because I've had just like, this is best therapy I've had in a long time. So I'm really looking forward to it again.
I agree. It's all therapeutic. Thank you again. I do appreciate you, and I appreciate the nice comments. And I'm really happy to hear that this is making a difference for people because I avoided doing this for a long time. You'll see I started my channel in 2018 and I did a couple episodes on starting on Ocrevus and my experience. And I didn't touch it. When I went through that asshole period for 2 years, like I wanted nothing to do with MS, but it was really tearing me apart every single day. And it was getting very bad. And so I didn't even want to talk about it. I wanted to not pretend like it was there. I wanted to ignore it. That's not healthy. And there was a point where I realized the more I spoke about it and the more people I met with it, the better I was getting. I was like, it's not just because they had a lot of information, but I felt more comfortable knowing I'm not alone in this journey. And this is much bigger than me. And that's why I started the channel, because like I didn't want it to be about clinical practitioners talking about what drugs you can take and all this stuff. I wanted it to be about patients dealing with what patients deal with this disease, because we're just people at the end of the day, and we have some very significant challenges and hurdles ahead of us. But we're navigating through it, and we're just stronger together.
Yeah. And let this community keep flourishing. So everybody, make sure to subscribe to Cliff and see more content that will put your mind at ease.
Thank you again, Kevin. I appreciate it. I will definitely stay in contact with you, and we'll do a follow up on this. And I'm excited to see where you're going with all this. This is cool.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to see where you're going with it as well.
All right. Thanks, buddy. You have a good one. Have a good weekend.
You too. Take care, Cliff.
Thanks.